Mhm. Greetings, everyone. My name is Dave Vanderkar. I'm the Executive Director for Lakeview Ministries, and I am recording this video. It is a the forum presentation that we did in case you weren't able to attend one of our forums. I still wanted to share this information with you about our future plan for here at Lakeview. So I'll go ahead and get into the presentation here. All right, so why are we here? Our hope is to share the plan for Lakeview's future. This will give Lakeview supporters an opportunity to express their views and opinions on this plan. It gives Lakeview supporters an opportunity to ask questions. And, this is not an attempt to come to an agreement or consensus on this plan. We aren't trying to, hammer out the path forward. What we are trying to do is summarize all attitudes and opinions on this plan. So if you weren't able to attend a forum, we do have the online survey available that you can go out and do. That'll be available until the end of the month here. So I encourage you, after watching this video, to go out and complete that survey. So I want to start with just the question, why is Lakeview here? And so as we look at camp's original mission statement, it is to provide Christian experiences of growth, inspiration, and recreation through outdoor ministry. And I'm excited because that mission statement is the mission statement that camp has been operating under for the last 60 years. That was in the first worship bulletin for kind of the dedication of the camp facilities back in 1964, and I think it's really neat that we continue to operate under that same mission. But that mission was tweaked a little bit in the mid 90s. There were some critical changes made by the board of directors at that time. They went through another visioning process and added a few little tweaks to the mission statement that made a huge impact. So those tweaks were adding the phrases people of all ages and year-round ministry. So, those two tweaks really set us on the path that we have been on for the last 30 years. And, it is something that we are still trying to fulfill. So, uh, as we look at those changes that were made, again, it set us down a path of expansion and growth, and that is kind of where we're going to go into now of where have we been. So to get started in the late 90s, they started with the Pathways of Promise campaign, and that campaign was the goal of it was to expand our camp facilities and also open up facilities that could be used throughout the entire year. And so in 1997, camp had about 600 campers during the summer, and opened up in April and closed down in September. It was really just a summer camp program. And so the Pathways of Promise campaign added capacity to the summer camp program, but also started to build facilities that could be used throughout the year, such as the dining hall at Camp Lakeview, the retreat centers in Mohegan and Quapaw, and that allowed us to start welcoming groups out to camp during the winter months. And so that expansion kind of took off. So again, summer of 97, they had about 600 campers. By summer of 2000, they were up to 1,200 campers. 2001 is when those retreat centers opened up. And by summer 2005, they were up at around 1,500 campers and had 30 to 40 kids a week on the wait list that wanted to come to camp that we didn't have room for. And that started the board down the direction of looking at expanding again. And they liked the model of the 120 kids a week at camp, and they didn't want to really expand beyond that for the Camp Lakeview facility. And so they started looking at what it would look like to just build an entire another camp. And the Let the Children Come campaign allowed us to build Lakeview Villages. And that camp opened up in 2011 and expanded the program and added additional retreat facilities that we were able to make use of throughout the year. But one of the things that, as we look at the expansion with Camp Lakeview and Lakeview Villages, those facilities were both really geared towards the summer camp program. And so there was not really you think about all of the sleeping arrangements being bunk beds, having bathrooms down the hallway or out in another building. Those work well for the summer camp program and for hosting youth events. But when it comes to family and adult ministry, those are not the ideal facilities to be used for that type of ministry. And so as we looked at expanding the serving people of all ages, the next kind of progression was to look at building a building that would be better used for serving those families and adults. And so originally the thought was to build that building at Camp Lakeview. Think of like a hotel style conference center. And that was kind of the direction we were looking. But we did have the opportunity to look at purchasing Camp Cedarbrook. And that was a facility that the owners of that facility originally came to us in 2013 and asked us if we'd be interested in taking over that property. But at that time, we had just opened the villages. We're really kind of recovering from that expansion, and it really wasn't a good time for us to consider taking on another property. And so at that time, we had identified some challenges that property would put in front of us, and we had told them, just now is not the right time for us to look at that. Well, a couple years went by, and that property was still available, and they came back to us and asked again if we were interested in taking it over. And some of those challenges that we had identified, most of those challenges we had identified, had been resolved. And so, it became evident that God was really pushing us in that direction to consider acquiring that property. And as we took a look at it, we realized that the location of that facility, the accessibility of it, really would lend itself well for expanding that as our family and adult ministry center. And so instead of looking at building a single building at Camp Lakeview to help serve that need, this would give us the opportunity to look at designing an entire facility that would be geared specifically for family and adult ministry. And so we did acquire Camp Cedarbrook and started to put in place a plan for developing that property. And that led us to the A Place for You campaign, which we started in 2019. And that campaign, had projects at all of our different facilities, but it did have a focus on building out what was the Camp Cedarbrook property. We had now rebranded into Lakeview Springs. That's the new name for that property, and also included some expansion at Camp Lakeview and Lakeview Villages. But something, a little bit minor happened in the pandemic in 2020 that really kind of had to make us take a step back and a pause during the Place for You campaign. So at that time, we had raised about 1.4 million of the $2.5 million goal for that campaign. But we really, again, had to take a pause there and look at what we needed to do to just survive as an organization. And fortunately, we have, kind of came through the pandemic, got our feet back underneath us, and at this point are really ready to look at moving forward into the future with expansion that we have identified over the course of the last few years, that in order for our ministry to move forward and continue to fulfill that mission, these are the projects that we would like to kind of kick off through this next campaign. And so those projects here are under the Where Are We Going tab, and we've kind of grouped them into 4 different categories, 3 of those being projects at each location, and then the 4th category we are calling ministry-wide improvements. And so those ministry-wide improvements start with and those ministry-wide improvements really are improvements that kind of affect the entire organization, not just a single site or location. So the first one would be a sewage system replacement for Camp Lakeview and Lakeview Villages. Currently, there are 2 separate systems that serve those properties, and both systems have some issues that are going on that we know are going to have to be addressed sooner rather than later. And so we are planning on, looking at what we need to do in order to kind of resolve those situations ideally with a single system that can serve both of those sites. But that is kind of the first major project under the ministry-wide improvements. Um, the next is to construct additional full-time staff housing. So currently, we try to provide housing for all of our program staff, and we just we have 3 houses on property right now, but we have 4 full-time program staff that we would like to be able to offer housing to each one of them. So that's the other big ministry-wide improvement there. We'd also like to look at some equipment purchases. This is kind of specifically with all of the construction projects going on, that it makes some sense to purchase our own equipment, where we don't have to rely on either renting equipment or having contractors come in and do some of that work that we can do on our own, and not have to kind of deal with contractors' timelines and everything. So. And then there's also some startup funds in there for what we're calling base camp. And the concept for this is that, we Camp Lakeview and Lakeview Villages are both going to be at the point where their capacity is 120 kids a week. And again, we don't want to really expand too much beyond that. And so this would provide an opportunity for kids to come to camp, but participate in programs that are outside of that basic camp program. So as an example, think of kids coming to camp, but then doing a servant event either on camp property, or maybe they go off-site into the community for that servant event. Maybe it's a program where they come on site and then they depart to do like a bike trip or a caving canoeing trip. So it's just a way that we can add some additional programs to increase our overall capacity without affecting, kind of the existing classic camp and village camp program. So these next ones are all kind of improvements that are happening at our specific locations. And so for Camp Lakeview, we're looking at adding a recreation center. This would be like a gymnasium style building that would have a couple of meeting rooms attached to it as well. And so that property, we would kind of the impact of the recreation center on the summer camp program is that, it gives the campers a place where they can go and get out of the weather, specifically if it's storming outside, raining outside. That's one of the hardest things if we have a week that is, very rainy, and we have 120, second through fifth graders that are trapped indoors all day. Right now, we don't really have a place where they can go and do athletic activity and kind of burn energy there. So that would be a great impact to the summer camp program. But this facility would also open up a lot of opportunities for us during the retreat season, because right now it's hard for us to host a lot of groups during the winter months, because it's just so hard to know what the weather's going to be, and how if we're going to be able to be outside and do programming outside or not. And so this recreation center would allow us to host youth retreats during the winter months and still provide a place for them to do programming no matter what the weather is outside. So we'd also be looking at some dining hall renovations because of the construction of the recreation center. So if you think about it, we'll probably be moving like the arts and crafts room and the game room and canteen and stuff out of the dining hall into that recreation center. And so that will allow us to kind of rethink how the dining hall serves the program, and look at not just like cosmetic renovations, but looking at, moving some walls and kind of repurposing the space there to better serve the program as we move forward. So at Lakeview Villages, the really neat thing about the projects we're looking at for the Lakeview Villages is most of them are already funded through a grant from the Lilly Endowment. So the construction of the 6th Village Cluster, the construction of housing for seasonal program assistance, and the paving of roadways and parking areas, those projects have all already been funded. We received a $647,000 grant from the Lilly Endowment, and that money will go towards finishing all of those construction projects. So The final one at the villages that we'd be looking at during this campaign is renovations to the point at the Village Lodge to add amphitheater capabilities. And so what that is looking like is, we have begun using that space kind of over the last 12 years. We realized how much we have come to rely on that space as a program area for campfire devotions, for meeting space, and we just want to kind of repurpose that area to make it better, to better be able to serve that purpose. So a couple of the concepts there is looking at putting a porch over the roof of the lot, putting a roof over the porch at the Village Lodge that faces the lake. That will provide more covered area for people to gather in case it's rainy out. And then also looking at putting a stage out on the point there, doing some hardscaping with some more permanent benches there, and just really allow that space to better serve the purpose that we have seen it kind of start to be during the program. So the final improvements that we're looking at are at the Lakeview Springs site. And so these are all kind of projects that would help to build out that property to allow us to start to welcome people there, allow us to start to do programs on site, and for that property to really start to kind of generate some income and support itself. So a lot of the projects here are kind of infrastructure and utility based. So, looking at parking and roadway infrastructure, getting utilities to all the different areas that we need them to be for future development. The big part that will allow us to start to do programming there is the construction of the family campground, and there'll be a bathhouse and a pavilion there to kind of support that campground, but that'll allow us to kind of welcome people on site and start to do programming with them. As a part of that improvement, we also need to look at the valley where the lake used to be, kind of finishing off the drainage there, rebuilding the creek bed and adding the water features that will allow us to kind of spend time down in the valley, building out program areas down there. All that stuff down in the valley will, give people activities to do when they're on site, give people a place to go and swim during the summer months, and just, kind of provide that program space for us to host groups there. So those are all the projects that we're looking at for Lakeview Springs. We're really excited to be able to start welcoming people onto the property and sharing love of Christ through design programs there. So that is the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself at our office or by email. But again, I encourage you to take the opportunity to go out, share your thoughts through the online survey that can be found. A link for that can be found at our website, lakeview.camp/future. But again, just thank you so much for loving this place, and we look forward to continuing to serve you. So I hope you have a blessed day, and we look forward to seeing you at camp again in the near future. Thanks.